Good evening and welcome to the September 16th, 2025 meeting of the Portsmouth Zoning Board of Adjustment. I call the meeting. We are in order. Please note, if you are speaking to a presentation, 15 minutes will be given to you. If you think you might need more, let us know before you start speaking and we will consider the request. Okay. If you are giving the presentation, if you are speaking to a presentation, we request a 5-minute limit. We have 3 postponements tonight. The requests for 28 Wooden Street, 51 Morning Street, and 86 South Street have been postponed to the October 21st Board of Adjustment meeting. So if you're here for that, you can go have a nice evening. Okay. Approval of the minutes of August 19th, 2025 is our first order of business. Does anybody? Yes. Yes,
Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Moss.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes. I have one suggested edit, if I get a second.
Second?
I will second, because I also have a suggested edit.
Hang on a second, that page just jumped somewhere. So this is kind of odd. This is in the approval of minutes section in the minutes from the last meeting. There's an error in the, there's a need for a correction in the first paragraph that starts out, Mr. Neese requested. In the second line, after activities, delete currently, where it first shows up. And then near the end of the sentence, there's the word had the word. That should read add the word currently, so that it reads and then the rest is correct.
Want to try that
correct?
again?
It's very fine.
Sorry.
Does anybody else have any suggestions? Yes, Mr. Raymond.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So on page 13 of the minutes, page 16 in our packets, the top portion of it, about the middle of that paragraph, is a sentence that starts, he said he in this case being myself, he said he was fearful that in the future, comma, the applicant would ask for a deck or something outside of the building envelope. I think an important point was, I was indicating, he said he was fearful that in the future, the applicant or a future owner would ask for a deck or something outside of the building envelope. So add in the words or a future owner in that location after applicant.
Okay. Any other suggested changes? Okay, then, all those in favor of accepting the amended minutes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay. New business this evening is the request of 955 US Route 1 Bypass LLC owner for property located at 955 US Route 1 Bypass, whereas relief is needed to remove the existing freestanding sign and install a new freestanding sign which requires the following. 1. A variance from section 10.1253.10 to allow a freestanding sign setback of 15 feet where 20 feet are required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 142, Lot 36, and lies within the Business District and Sign District. Is there anyone to speak to this?
Good evening. My name is Peter March, New Hampshire Signs, 66 Gold Ledge Avenue, Auburn, New Hampshire. So requesting variance to reduce the setback for a new sign on this property on 955 US Route 1 from 20 feet to 15 feet. As you stated, it's in the business zone and it's in sign zone 4. So the sign is conforming, but for the setback. When I wrote the narrative, the site was being upgraded, has already been upgraded, and it's been turned from a fairly shabby Monster gas into a brand new sparkling Sunoco. There are currently 2 road signs, and if you look at the left-hand drawing, you can see one of them with the little pricer behind it. And what we want to do is consolidate those into a single sign, and you can see that on the right-hand side. The variance really is because this is really the only logical place to put that sign on this particular side. We can't use the existing base of the existing sign because it's cracked, so we want to move it slightly south and put a new base in. We've got engineering for that base, and then install the sign that you see. And to do that, we're going to need a setback of 15 feet rather than the required 20. So, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. There are several special conditions that distinguish this property. The canopy and the store are both close to the road, limits the possible sign location. The site has several points of entry, not only on Route 1 but on the crossroad as well. And there's no real logical location to put the sign other than the one we're asking for. The request is reasonable. The existing sign is the same setback, and the location does not present a hazard to any passers-by more than the existing sign. So in the interest of the users of the station, the public, the sign be visible and prices be displayed clearly so that traffic safety is enhanced. The proposed use will observe the spirit of the ordinance. The purpose of the sign code, among others, is to maintain and enhance the character of the city's commercial districts. The entire upgrade, including the sign, turns this blighted property into an attractive site. Adding a new sign would consolidate the number of freestanding signs from the current 2 signs to 1 and will declutter the area of the site. 3, substantial justice will be done to the property owner. The proposed sign in this location is really in the only logical place to put it. You can't move it north because it would impede the lot. You can't move it south substantially, as it would impede the setback from the adjacent property. It's necessary for gas stations to advertise fuel prices. It's an integral part of why gas stations are successful. And gas stations that don't advertise prices are generally not successful. So the gas station needs to advertise the brand and the price. The proposed use will not diminish the value of surrounding properties. Allowing this change will not result in changing the essential character of the neighborhood. The setback really doesn't change, and the reduction of signage will improve property values. It'll have a positive effect on the values of surrounding properties. To the last point, little enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. The 20-foot setback rule is impossible to meet in this case because of the layout of the site and also the respective locations of the building and the canopy. If this variance was denied, the owner would not be able to advertise the business and especially advertise prices on the sign in an effective manner. So we request the board's favorable decision.
Other questions? Yes, Mr. Rossi.
The one thing that confuses me a little bit with regard to how the setback is measured is that the old sign had a single post that was, looks like maybe 3 or 4 feet farther away from the road, probably close to 20 feet from the road as it stood. And the new sign is obviously 2 posts, and so the post that's closest to the road is quite a bit different from what it had been. So I'm just wondering how it turned out in the city's calculations that the setback hadn't changed.
The setback changed by 6 inches, so it measures from the edge of the sign. So although the post that holds it up is in the center, the edge of the sign is closer to the road.
Yeah.
It's pretty well depicted in their
No,
graphic
I
here.
understand that, yeah.
So that 6 inches is accounting for the change between
Yep.
the old sign edge and the new sign post.
Essentially, the setback of the site is measured from the sign, not necessarily the post
Right.
that holds the sign up.
Why is it 2 posts now instead of 1 post?
It's a standard Sunoco sign. It's a standard that Sunoco produces their signs to. It's more, I would suggest it's more stable. I don't think it creates any more danger to anyone being 2 posts and single post. But it's a stock standard Sunoco sign.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in opposition to the petition? Is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Okay, in that case, the public hearing is closed. Anybody? Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to grant the variance for the application as presented and advertised.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
I'll start with just a few comments. This is a pretty minor change to an existing location. I mean, we're talking about a difference of 6 inches in setback. But to go through the criteria, granting the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. There's no evidence that this will affect the health, safety, or welfare of the neighborhood. No effect, obviously, on light and air compared to what is currently existing. That doesn't alter the essential characteristics of the neighborhood. Remains a commercial area. It's consistent with the spirit of the sign ordinance in that it will be actually reduction in the signage on the place, or at least a relocation in the number of structures. There's only going to be one sign. I can't see any benefit to the public by disapproval. There will be clearly a loss to the applicant. They'll either have to use an old sign with a bad base or no sign at all, which isn't going to work for a gas station. So granting the variance will do substantial justice as a result. It will not diminish the value of surrounding properties. This is a commercial strip. Signs like this are needed by all the gas stations on the strip. There's been no evidence presented that it will diminish the value, and in fact, as pointed out, the upgrades to the station, which include the sign, may increase the value. Moving on to the last criteria, there are some special conditions to the property. These are mainly the construction of the property, the location of the building, the location of the gas pumps and the canopies, the number of ingress and egress locations on the lot, limit where you could put a sign. You would also probably want the sign on the Route 1 bypass rather than on Cutts Avenue, because that's where most of the traffic is. And so these conditions of the property show that there's really no fair and substantial relationship between the purposes of the ordinance, which is to have a larger setback, and specific application to the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the second have anything to add?
I'll just add that the sign will essentially be in the same spot that the existing one was, and it's actually slightly smaller in terms of square footage, so it seems completely reasonable.
Okay. Is there any discussion before we take the vote? Mr. Rayam?
Yeah, I'll be supporting the motion, and just one additional point. I know this board was held a similar gas station signage request last month to a very, very tight interpretation of the ordinance, but I do think it's important to note that this particular sign that's being put up is less than half of what would be allowed in the in sign district 4 in terms of overall square footage. So that also helps, in my mind, indicate this is a very modest request.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Then a yes vote allows the sign. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
Ms. Margerson?
Yes.
Mr. Rayam?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You're approved. Okay. The next item of business is the request of Catherine Ann Bradford, 2020 Revocable Trust owner, for property located at 170-172 Gate Street, whereas relief is needed to demolish the existing garage and construct a new garage, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to allow A, 45% building coverage where 30% is required, and B, 0-foot right side yard where 10 feet is required, and 2, a variance from section 10.573.20 to allow a 0-foot rear yard where 10.5 feet is required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 103, Lot 19, and lies within the general residences B and historic districts. Is there anyone to speak to this?
I'm present, but Dan Whitney is, I'm the building contractor on that project, but And Whitney's going to be available for a Zoom call.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
did we know that?
We didn't know that ahead of time, but if you could come up and just introduce yourself as the the authority in the room,
And say again what you,
and then I'll let Ken on.
Hi, I'm sorry. My name is Joe Terravecchia Building and Restoration in Portsmouth here. I'm going to be doing the renovation of that project, that home, and I was just on the phone with Ann 20 minutes ago, and she said that she was scheduled to do a Zoom presentation. She's far more familiar with the details of the project, of that aspect of the project than I am, so.
All right. Are you okay with that?
with waiting for.
So
she
Anne is
on Zoom?
online.
Oh, she is online.
Yep.
Yes.
Per our rules, there needs to be somebody in the room with the authority
Then
to
I-
make decisions on the applicant's behalf. Anne can speak, and I have the slides.
Yes, I'm okay with that.
Just a point of, I don't see an authorization for the builder, I believe, to represent the applicant.
Anne, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Did you provide a authorization for the contractor to represent the applicant?
I didn't. He's on the permit file as he's as a guest on the permit file. And I spoke with the owner just about less than an hour ago, and she couldn't make it, and Joe was going to fill in for her. And he's registered on the building permit.
Does that meet your question?
I,
I know what you're saying.
yeah, I think we would have to check our rules.
What is it?
Does it make a difference that Anne is presenting her own work?
The issue is if we have a technical difficulty and
Oh.
Anne can't
I see, okay.
make decisions, kind of like we've had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So the rules, when we revised them recently, said that we had to have an authorized representative in the room.
Okay, I see.
Would she be able to do that orally by Zoom?
No,
Or it has to be the property owner that does?
But if he does the explanation and she gives the final say-so, is that not meeting the rules?
it's only if there's a technical difficulty and we lose her. Otherwise, we're all
Oh,
set.
that you mean, no.
No?
That was the reasoning for adding that rule.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying that gets around the issue.
Okay.
In my opinion, if we don't have an authorization form, I would say no, but it's up to the board.
Such a de minimis.
What say you?
I know. That's your decision.
And this is a Portsmouth-based rule as opposed to a New Hampshire-based rule?
Part of our
You could
rules.
vote to suspend the rules, I suppose.
Okay.
How are people feeling? Yes, Ms. Jennings. You are our expert here.
No, I'm not, but, Madam Chair, to be honest, this is basically revisiting a variance that we granted last year, I think, because of a minor change. And because of that, I would be comfortable making a motion to suspend the rules to allow the applicant to represent herself on Zoom and make decisions.
It's
A
that-
second.
it's the architect,
Oh, she's the architect.
Yeah.
and who does have the required permission.
She does have the required, okay. I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules to allow the architect to serve as the representative present with authority via Zoom.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nay?
Nay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that was one
That
no?
was one nay.
Okay.
The lawyer in the crowd.
Then, you may proceed.
Great, thank you. Ann Whitney, I'm the architect for the project. As noted by one of your members, we received approval for this rebuilding of the garage on July 16th, 2024. And in the process of getting the building permit, there was a stipulation for the building permit that we get a surveyor to set the corner posts and record the actual size of the building. When I did the initial measurements back in early 2024, the building is quite a lot of disrepair, and so I might have been a little conservative in just showing it at 20 by 12 feet, but in reality it's 20.3 feet wide and 20.4 feet long. Adding that additional square footage does not change the allowable building coverage that we were awarded in 16th and 24. The original approval was for 44.4%, 47%, and this request is for 44.78%. So we're still slightly under the approved 45% coverage. And what we're actually doing is just adding a little bit more square footage in that non-conforming zone. The setbacks are what they are because we've registered those corners with the surveyor. And in discussions with the client, they would like to, because it's such a small structure, build it so it matches the existing garage that was there. And in fact, it's actually a little bit less because the building is sort of out of square now, so I went to the more conservative dimensions. So are there any questions on that, or I can continue to the criteria?
Questions prior to? No. Okay, go ahead, Ann.
Okay. Criteria for the variance. The variance is not contrary to the public interest in that many properties in this neighborhood are non-conforming to building areas and setbacks. The garage will be rebuilt over the existing footprint. The variations are consistent with the spirit of the ordinance in that it will allow this current garage use to be continued. Substantial justice will be done as the variances will not expand the approved building coverage. These variances will not diminish the value of surrounding properties. The rebuilt garage will replace a dilapidated structure. And 5, the special condition of this property is the conformity of the existing garage and lot. The lot at 3393 square feet is just 67% of the required 5,000 square feet in this zone. And I guess, are there any questions now?
Questions? No? Okay. Then, is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in opposition? Anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Then the public hearing is closed. I'm sorry, you can sit down. You may sit down now.
I would like to make a motion to approve the application as presented and advertised.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, so in essence, this is an application that reflects a measurement change that came about as a result of some surveying work to make the measurements a little bit more precise than they were when this almost identical application came before us a little, just fairly recently. And as such, the board already has already gone on record of approving of the rebuilding of this garage. This will not be contrary to the public interest. This structure, or the one that will be replaced, already exists, and therefore there can be no real loss to the public interest simply by replacing an old rundown garage with one that is more sturdy and aesthetically pleasing. The variance is consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. The ordinance is not designed to prohibit maintaining a safe structure on the property, and therefore it is consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. Substantial justice will be done, as there really is no change to the surrounding area. The public will certainly not be experiencing any loss, and therefore there is nothing to counterbalance the gain or the loss to the applicant the loss to the applicant if this application were to be denied. The variance will not diminish the value of surrounding properties. I agree with the applicant that rebuilding the garage and replacing a dilapidated structure with a more current one of essentially the same dimensions and design can have no conceivable impact on the surrounding properties other than to improve their value. The special condition of the property is the very substandard or non-conforming lot size, which makes it difficult, if not impossible, to conceive of an alternate location for this garage that would be conforming with setbacks and lot coverage requirements. That's the extent of my motion.
Do you have anything to add, Mr. Ram?
No, I agree with all of Mr. Rossi's points. The only thing I would add is, to me, this is the exact reason why we call for rounding of all of the values in the legal notice, is to provide for this type of error. I'm not quite sure why this is coming before the board. In my mind, it is 0.3% change. It's still within the 45%. So I understand it's a little bit bigger, but at the same point in time, that's the whole point of what we try and do. So
I can clarify if you'd like.
sure.
So it wasn't the issue of more or less square foot or building coverage. It was the fact that it was a different design, and we just don't, as staff, we don't have the authority to make that decision. So because it was a bigger structure, that's why it's before you.
Okay.
Understood.
Okay, is there any discussion before we take a vote? Okay. So a yes vote approves the garage. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Ram?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So you are approved.
Great, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thanks for making the exception, too.
And I am recused for the next vote, and I am handing the gavel to the vice chair.
She's taking it
all our viewers
with
at
zeal.
home.
Look at her.
Taking it with glee.
Radio audience.
Touch it?
Okay, thank you. So the next item of, whoa, it's really loud. The next item of business is new business C, the request of 445 Marcy Street LLC owner and Blue Sky Development Group LLC applicant for property located at 20 Prairie Street, whereas relief is needed to construct a single dwelling and accessory dwelling unit, which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.1114.31 to allow a second driveway where only one is permitted, and 2, a variance from section 10.571 to allow an accessory structure to be located closer to the street than the principal structure. Said property is located on Assessor Map 101, Lot 3-1, and lies within the general residence B and historic districts. And who is here to speak to this application?
Good evening, Madam Acting Chair. Chris Mulligan from Hopeful Phoenix in Portsmouth on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is Tracy Kozak, the project architect, and Eric Weinrib from Altus Engineering, who did the site plans that you have before you. This is a property that was created by a subdivision in 2022. The proposal before you is to develop what is currently a vacant lot with a single-family residence and a detached garage in which we are proposing to site an accessory dwelling unit. The proposal, the plans before you have been approved by the Historic District Commission back in July. We had a number of work sessions regarding the property with the HDC to get the massing and scale right, going back a number of years, I believe. So I think it's important to understand that what we're proposing is compliant with lot size, lot coverage, open space, and all applicable setback requirements except for this secondary front yard setback requirement, because this is a through lot on, having frontage on Prairie Street and Partridge Street, and because we are proposing an accessory structure, the accessory structure is closer to Partridge Street than the primary structure, so we need that relief. And we're also seeking relief from the prohibition against more than one driveway because we do have frontage on Partridge Street, which we believe we should be able to take advantage of as it is a more beneficial design. So the proposal would be to construct a new single-family dwelling on the lot. Next to that would be a detached garage. The detached garage would extend further back from the primary dwelling, and that would push it closer to Partridge Street, which then triggers the relief needed from Section 571. A couple of important points, additional important points to note. We are within the 250-foot state wetlands setback on this property. So regardless of what we construct on this site, we are going to need, in addition to local approvals, state DES approvals for the project. Furthermore, I understand that you received communications from one of the abutters regarding a ponding issue on the property. That is something that does need to be addressed. In fact, 2 years ago, the prior owner had a proposal that was approved with a curb cut on Partridge Street that had significant stormwater management and a drainage plan. Eric can speak to that in a bit, but he's confident that that can be done again in this design should it move forward. The point being that the stormwater management, drainage, erosion concerns are concerns that need to be dealt with. They would need to be dealt with whether or not we got the driveway variance relief that we're requesting, because we wouldn't be able to develop the lot without handling the ponding issue. And the stormwater management and drainage analysis will have to be approved by the DPW before permits are issued. And that can be a condition of approval if the board is so inclined. But so that's the project in a nutshell. And unless you have questions about the specific design of the project, I can just get into the criteria necessary to grant the variances.
Any questions from any members of the board? Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
Please continue.
So the granting the requested variances would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the ordinance, nor would it be contrary to the public interest. Here, the test is whether or not the essential character of the neighborhood would be altered if the relief was granted. This is essentially a residential neighborhood. What we're proposing will leave this as a residential neighborhood. The placement of the driveway and the placement of the accessory structure will not irrevocably alter the essentially residential character of the neighborhood. As I discussed, the development will require stormwater mitigation, a drainage study, erosion control, et cetera. The health, safety, and welfare of the public will not be negatively affected, and in fact, the condition that exists there now will be ameliorated. We're going to need state approval for the project, regardless of what we do there. So there will be additional eyes on this project, and there will be a net benefit to the health, safety, and welfare of the public if this is approved. Substantial justice will be done by granting the variances. Here, this is the balancing test. The loss to the applicant, should the relief not be granted, outweighs any benefit to the public, in our opinion, should you require strict compliance with the ordinance. The accessory building is clearly subordinate to the primary structure. The mass and scale of both buildings was thoroughly vetted by the Historic District Commission, and that's how we came to the design we have. It's only because this is a through lot that we need that setback relief for the accessory dwelling. If we somehow attached the garage, we would comply with the ordinance, but we, by doing that, we would run afoul of the desires of the historic district and the historic character of the neighborhood. So we believe this is a more appropriate design solution. A second driveway is actually less pavement on the property than if we were to install or propose a side-by-side driveway servicing both the accessory dwelling unit and the primary unit on Prey Street. There are other reasons why we believe that is a less desirable design solution. Primarily, if we can separate the parking for the units, we can mitigate potential conflicts with other driveways on Prey Street and with the primary unit. That promotes the provision of accessory dwelling units, which is a consistent statewide policy goal. But again, we'll eliminate conflicts with the properties on Prey Street that have driveways in close proximity. Values of surrounding properties will not be diminished. This will be brand new code compliant construction. It will include significant landscaping. As I discussed, again, a drainage plan which will improve the ponding issue in the neighborhood. So values of surrounding properties will be enhanced. This will be millions of dollars invested into this property. Then finally, strict compliance with the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. There are special conditions of this property for the existing neighborhood. It's a relatively large lot. It's, again, a through lot, which is somewhat unusual. And it is in the historic district where the mass and scale concerns are such that creating a attached accessory dwelling unit would be quite problematic. As I stated prior, if this were a conventional lot with frontage on just Prey Street, we wouldn't need relief from 571. These are special conditions of the property that are such that it is unnecessary to require strict compliance. And I want to be, I don't mean to lecture anyone, but I want to be clear that the test and the standard is not impossibility. It's whether or not the requirement is necessary to fulfill the goal of the underlying ordinance. And we believe in this case, on this specific property, the goals of the ordinance are not met by strict compliance. The use is a reasonable use. These are a residential use, residential dwelling, and an accessory dwelling unit. These are permitted in this zone and consistent with the uses in the immediate vicinity. So for all those reasons, we believe there's no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the restriction against a second driveway on this property and the requirement that we meet the front yard setback on both Partridge Street and Prey Street and their applications to this particular property. So that's everything. I believe we've met the criteria and the relief should be granted. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Ram?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one question. What was the reasoning for putting the main structure oriented toward Prey Street and right along Prey Street? What was the driver for that?
I'll let Tracy handle that.
It was consistent with the neighborhood to have the houses up to the street. We were actually commended on that fact from the Historic District Commission for maintaining the street edge by having the house fronting Prey Street.
Okay, and then orienting it towards Prey rather than Partridge, what was the driver for that?
The grade is higher on Prey Street, and it's more out of the flood zone is the reason we did that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So with that, I'll just have a quick question. So just want to clarify exactly the zoning relief. The zoning relief is for the second driveway that services the ADU on the Partridge Street side, correct?
That's one, yes.
And the other variance is for having a dwelling, is for having that in front of the principal dwelling for the Partridge Street side.
It's an accessory structure that is closer to, that's within a front yard, essentially, closer
Because
than the
it's on the
primary
Partridge
structure.
side.
Because,
Because
yes.
you talked about other things, so I just want to clarify.
Okay.
That is the two variance requests before us tonight.
That's correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right. Okay. If seeing no questions, is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone on Zoom, Steph?
Not to speak.
Okay, and is there anyone here who would like to speak against this application?
Hello, good evening. Tyler Markley, 445 Marcy Street. I'm a direct abutter. First of all, I want to thank you all for your service here, serving on the Civic Board. I'm here to speak in opposition of purely the variance grant, to grant a variance against 3.3.2, which is the request for a second driveway. Just so we're all familiar with what this ordinance is, it's pretty simple. It's one of the most simple ones literally in the ordinances. It says driveways shall be limited to one per lot. This is a very, very clear ordinance. The hardship that's claimed here by the applicant is that there's multiple frontages. This is not a unique attribute in our neighborhood. In fact, 5 of the surrounding 9 abutters all have multiple frontages on different streets. This is not a hardship in any manner. In fact, the applicant suggests multiple times that they have other options that don't require them to get a variance from this ordinance in order to comply. I actually think when you start looking at the language, in fact, they say that this supposed hardship offers the opportunity to cite the parking space. They're asked to take advantage of this frontage. It's not actually presenting a hardship. They're asking for the opportunity now to then present a second driveway. Additionally, the applicant's own language during this testimony where he said they're looking to take advantage of that site frontage. This is not a hardship. There's no necessary hardship here for us to appeal and grant a variance. Additionally, if we want to walk through the additional criteria here, I'd love if my photos were able to be put up, or my letter that was submitted to here as kind of an exhibit as we're going through. Hopefully everyone can see it. This is a very unique and challenging lot hydrologically. Half of this lot fills up with water. It serves a very essential drainage. I'm very happy to hear the DES will be involved in this. However, as a board, we need to make sure that all the criteria are met today. Future promises cannot serve to basically guarantee that these criteria are met. Additionally, conditions can only be brought in to help ensure that the criteria continue to be met, and not as a way to meet criteria here as we're assessing this ordinance. We have a lot of water challenges. Actually, when I was up pulling the plans for this the other day, there was a picture of our neighborhood, and it was talking about Portsmouth's climate challenges. We need to be very careful on how we engineer this. In fact, I appreciate some of the design challenges and solutions this team has come up with. However, placing driveway fill grading when we don't need to, the applicant admits this. In this area where we have such sensitivity to this water and it's so damaging to our area is just basically, I mean, it definitely causes adverse effect for us as property owners, also endangering the public access point that is Partridge Street. We have had emergency services have to respond to the end of Partridge Street during these flooding events, which are actually pretty normal. And, you know, exasperating that issue clearly causes adverse effects for both the public and private property owners here. Appreciate your time and appreciate your consideration on those topics. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Could you please identify yourself and state your name for the record, please? Your
Certainly.
address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Michelle McLaughlin, and I am an abutter at 469 Marcy Street. And I would like to request that the variance for a second driveway at 20 Partridge Street be denied by the board. I do support my neighbor, Tyler Markley's statements tonight, that the developer's request does not meet the criteria as delineated in the 5 statutory tests for a variance. Tyler has spoken to this in some detail already, so I will summarize. Number 1, granting of the variance would be contrary to the public interest, as it would alter water drainage, water flow, and water retention in this precarious flood zone area, thereby jeopardizing nearby historic foundations, public streets, as well as emergency access, as we experienced during the flooding of January 2024. I do appreciate that the developer will be going through the state for additional approvals and evaluations, but as Tyler mentioned, the situation that we are confronted with tonight has none of that information available as yet, and I feel that we should be focusing on what exists today. Number 2, the spirit of the ordinance would otherwise be upheld, as there is absolutely no hardship necessitating a second driveway on Partridge Street. Number 3, there is no substantial justice that would exist in this instance, as the developer has the option of creating a driveway on the primary lot line rather than on Partridge Street. Furthermore, the harm to the public and abutters with increased flooding in the area far outweighs any perceived benefit to the developer. Number 4, property value impacts must be considered in this case, as the increased flooding will surely increase flooding to neighboring properties and thus decrease property values. Number 5, as I've stated a few times already, there is absolutely no hardship in this case, as there is a legally sufficient driveway option on the primary lot line. Please carefully consider these factors and deny the request for Partridge Street driveway. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in opposition to this application? No one on the Zoom? And so is there anyone here who would like to speak to, for, or against this application?
Good evening, Eric Weinrub with Altus Engineering. We've been working on this project for many years. We're involved in the original subdivision. We prepared the stormwater management plans when the original owner was going to develop it, and we worked very closely with DPW in having them review, approve, and support our design. So we're very confident that with this new design, DPW will be in full support of our approach. We're going to deal with it with permeable surfaces for the driveway. We're going to have subsurface detention, and we're going to improve the drainage that on the property so that we can convey it out of the area and into the culvert that discharges into the river. Excuse me, a little hoarse, a lot of talking today. We will prepare engineering calculations like we always do, meeting the city's site plan review standards, and have DPW review it. And what we'll have when this project is done, a situation where the drainage is better than it is there today, I've been aware of that area since the early 80s when I first came to the area. I had a roommate that worked at Sanders, and I won a bet, and he did push-ups in that pond in January of 1985. So I'm very much aware of those situations. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak to, for, or against this application?
Marsha McCormick, 53 Salter Street. And I've been paying attention to this since it first came up. And what's interesting is there are so many objections by the neighbors, but nobody's come forward in the neighborhood to support it. I would like a clarification on these ADUs. I thought that if you had a property that had another structure on the property, then you could convert it into an ADU. We had a situation on Salter Street where somebody came before this board, asked for permission for an ADU, and the next thing you know, it was a condominium association. So I just would like a clarification on can you just build an ADU? Is that typical? Is that what people do?
I'm a little reluctant to field questions from the audience, but I'll allow Steph to answer that question due to recent law changes.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to speak specifically on the law, but the laws have changed since that last Salter Street ADU. They changed within the last 6 months. If you'd like more information on that, I can give you my card and we can.
Yeah, I would, because this is a very important decision that you're going to make, and it's going to affect a lot of other properties. So, and that's a dense neighborhood, and you need to consider the traffic and people. You know, it's a congested neighborhood. So, I will take your card, and yeah, just need some help. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak to, for, or against this application?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just to briefly address the last point, and I assume the members of the board are aware, but the changes in the state law don't affect the city's ordinance prohibiting accessory dwelling units to be in condominium ownership separate from the ownership of the primary dwelling. So they have to be in common ownership, and they will be. I mean, and that's a requirement that the city has on its books that was not affected by the change in the law. So this will not be a condominium association. I just wanted to put that out there for clarity. Other than that, I think you've heard what we have. Again, I understand Mr. Markley's argument about how we're asking to take advantage of this unique feature of this property. But again, hardship is, the way it's defined is not impossibility. There are other solutions. This is just a better solution. And that's why there's an unnecessary hardship imposed by requiring us to strictly comply with that provision of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to speak to, for, or against? Seeing no one rise and there's no one on Zoom, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask the board for its deliberation. Mr. Rossi?
Not prepared to make a motion at this moment, but I would like to just share a couple of thoughts, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
I think it's an interesting case. I think with the changes in law about the allowance for ADUs, we're going to see a lot more requests for additional driveways coming out of lots. And I also think that, if this were on a flat plane where I was just looking at, the lot and where things are placed, it makes perfect logical sense that you might have to have the accessory dwelling unit on one side or another be closer to either the primary frontage or the secondary frontage road. Those are all sort of logical, just facts that are consistent with the property. what troubles me is the current condition of flooding and waste and water management. It's not clear to me that once all of the work is done to mitigate that and get a plan that's satisfactory to the DPW, that this proposal, as it currently stands, will be the one that ends up being built. We've had cases in the past where people have made a proposal, we've approved it because of state regulations with waterfront on, let's say, one area or another. I don't want to be too specific. They've had to come back and move a foundation or raise a foundation or do this, that, or the other thing, and it's required multiple iterations in front of this board. At this time, I am concerned that I'm not satisfied that proceeding with the project would not have an adverse impact on surrounding property values, or that it would meet the substantial justice criterion. So without the benefit of seeing exactly how this will be mitigated on this project, I don't see myself supporting the proposal.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Ram?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So, I mean, I think a lot of this is really driven by the fact that this property has 2 front yards. If Partridge Street didn't exist, I think the, at least in terms of the positioning of the second structure, the accessory structure, would not be an issue. It would be allowed, the size of it would be allowed. And again, as the applicant has indicated, they are going to really, for the benefit of the actual property owner, if no one else, they're going to want to try and mitigate all of this flooding issue if this is going to actually be a property that's going to be in use. You're not going to want your backyard flooding all the time. I think there are technical solutions that can resolve that. I think they're being looked at. I agree there's a hint of a leap of faith, but I do have great faith in the Department of Public Works and the other permits that they're going to need to get. Will it stop it if it's catastrophic flooding throughout the whole entire neighborhood? No, but that's going to be a problem for the whole entire neighborhood. It's not just this one parcel that's going to have that problem in the event of some level of unprecedented flooding or nearly unprecedented flooding in the area. So it really, and I always struggle with the term hardship. When we talk about that, it's really not hardship. It's how is this property different than other properties in the same zone that justify doing something that the zoning ordinance doesn't normally allow? That's really what the hardship criteria is about. And the word hardship just suddenly kind of throws on, well, you've got to be, limping and having a, not being able to get something done in some way, because otherwise now you don't have a hardship. No, really, ultimately, there's still property rights. The applicant and through their representatives have the opportunity to develop property in the way that they want to go and develop it. Now, that said, if it's contrary to the zoning ordinance, they have to go and show why their property is unique and different in some way that, when we peanut butter spread over the GRB, all of these requirements, it really didn't take into the account the unique aspects of my particular property, and therefore you're unfairly taking away my ability to make full use of my property, right? So everything is always going to be the applicant's desire. There's a desire element to build something on this property and to put an ADU on the property, to position it the way it is. All those things are certainly desires. Are they, so egregious towards the zoning ordinance? And also, is there something unique about this, which a through lot is, yes, between Prairie Street and Partridge Street. There are some other examples, in this general area, but overall, the GRB, a through lot's a pretty unusual kind of thing to happen. We don't see it very much in most neighborhoods in the city. So therefore, it's kind of creating this duality where they have both an opportunity with a second driveway and this new requirement of having back-to-back front yards that virtually no other property would have. So I think in both cases, I think the requests are well within the allowable criteria, where it's really being driven by this unique characteristic of the property. An ADU is allowed, a separate ADU is allowed. They've gone through the extensive process of the Historic District Commission. which drives in many ways some of the things that they're looking at, as the applicant has indicated. If it was all just one structure, this requirement would go away. However, the historic look of the neighborhood would be best preserved in the eyes of the HDC to create it as a separate structure. And then I think the request for a second driveway, again, yes, it's a desire, but I think it's logical. I think it's also something that is being driven by the unique characteristic of the property. Yes, they could go and put a double on Prairie Street, but that would just potentially even further complicate the ability of people on Prairie Street. None of these streets are very wide or a lot of room there, so it's going to further complicate that. I also have some concerns about putting pavement right up against a neighboring property line, right? This will provide a little bit more respectful setback on the Prairie Street side and a respectful setback on the Partridge Street side for the property. So with that, I think they're meeting the criteria and would be willing to support approval.
Are there any questions or further discussion from this side of the board? Back on that side of the board.
Well, I'm prepared to make a motion, but if someone else wants to make a comment before I do or after, but I'm prepared to make a motion.
Want to see if there's any more comments.
Like
Mr. Mantle?
Tom and David already said, it's an interesting request. I think the board is well aware of my distaste for the city's zoning when it comes to corner lots. Through lots are no exception. I think in a lot of cases there's a built-in hardship because those lots are unfairly penalized. And in this case, for the variance, the second variance, 10.5.7 to allow accessory dwelling closer to the principal structure, as our chairman clarified, that's for Partridge Street, which goes to the uniqueness of a through lot. But I don't think they're that unique. But I agree, the zoning is, in my estimation, unfair to those specific properties. That being said, there's no hardship for the second driveway. That has nothing to do with the lot. It's a preference. Now, if some board members want to believe that preferences are now hardships, that's there on them. The applicant states it's a preference. It's just not a hardship. So I am definitely split on the variance if we do them together.
Anybody else have any comments or questions before we try a motion? So I'll just say that as the acting chair, my concerns are more the stormwater and the water drainage issues. We just had an application that had to come back to us after it started to be reworked for all of the drainage issues. I would have preferred to have seen that stuff being done beforehand. I very much appreciate how very complicated this application is. It's extremely complicated. But that said, if we deny it based on stormwater issues, then there may be no reasonable opportunity for this property to be used by the owner in the way that it's intended on the zoning ordinance. So those are my concerns as to, but I think the second driveway, my concern would be having sort of a double wide driveway on Prairie Street might really ruin the streetscape. I think that's putting a lot of pavement right there on Prairie Street, but I can understand that people would feel differently. So, Mr. Ram?
Yeah, just one comment to something you just said. I mean, I agree. In the past, we have had a couple instances where it required some foundational changes and other things like that. I don't think anything that we're being asked for here for relief could be necessarily impacted by that, in the sense that if the stormwater management plan ultimately comes back and says, you know what, putting a driveway off of Partridge Street just won't work, then the applicant can't put a driveway there. They would have the relief to do so, but they would not be taking advantage of it, and we'd be in the exact same place we are now. This is giving the applicant the opportunity, if the stormwater management plan works out, that they could go and put the driveway there. If it doesn't, then they're probably back to the double driveway on Prairie Street.
Okay. So, Mr. Neese, do you have anything you'd like to add? Before I'd like to ask for a motion.
Okay, I'll be quick, or try to be quick. So I think the accessory dwelling, the accessory structure closer to the street, because we have two streets here, to me, that's a no-brainer. I mean, I'd go so far as to say, when we write our report in January, we ought to consider mentioning that to the planning department, that this is bluntly, I think, kind of silly, that anytime you have two streets, anytime you have a through lot and you want an accessory unit, you're going to have to come for a variance. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me to require that when that's the only place you can put an accessory unit, one way or the other. With respect to the second driveway, I would feel more comfortable if we put a stipulation on the second driveway variance, something along the lines that it's contingent on approval of a stormwater management plan by the relevant authorities. But that's just a suggestion.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is perhaps a little bit of split of opinion as to the two variances. So I just want to see the appetite of the board as to whether or not you would like to split the variances for purposes of a motion or keep them together as an application, Mr. Rayum?
Yeah, Madam Chair, towards that end, I would actually, let's start off with, I would make a motion to approve the second variance of a variance from section 10.571 to allow an accessory structure to be located closer to the street than the principal structure, and just deal with that first.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Mr. Mattson, Mr. Rayum, your motion?
Okay, thank you. So, I've said a lot in general terms about why I do think that, certainly the aspect of this being a through lot is influencing the applicant's request here. So towards that end, we have granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest, and granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. Again, what we're trying to accomplish, characteristics of the neighborhood, I think the Historic District Commission has weighed in, looking at the overall characteristics of the neighborhood. The applicant's already indicated, hey, we really had to push the house towards the Prey Street side, which sort of created that if we're going to create any kind of accessory structure, it's probably going to extend beyond, the size of and massing of that house. If they made a huge house that went all the way from Prey Street to Partridge Street, then this might not be an issue because they wouldn't be, in a principal front yard anymore. That said, the appropriate massing is a relatively modest size house that's put up against the Prey Street side, and so any accessory building is going to, by its nature, probably extend into the second front yard that they have. So I think that really they are meeting those two criteria in that sense. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Again, this is our balancing test. Specific to, can they put the accessory structure, regardless of what it contains, in this particular case, it is a garage and ADU, but regardless of what it was, as long as it ends up in that sort of second front yard, is there anything in the public purposes that would outweigh the applicant's desire to go and put it in that location? I don't believe so. Again, it's really sort of being driven by the fact that this is a through lot with the two front yards, and the nature of the way that the topography and the layout has set it up. I just don't think there's anything there that the public outweighs it. Granting the variance would not diminish the values of surrounding properties. Again, related to this specific request, I don't think the fact that you're going to have a structure that extends closer to Partridge Street, I think it's actually going to kind of look somewhat normal in the sense that it'll sort of add like a feel of occupation towards the Partridge Street side. There's really nothing there that's going to necessarily impact the property values. And then lastly, the unique conditions about this property. Again, it is a through lot. It has some topography concerns with it. Also has the fact that it's in the historic district. The proposed design is trying to comply with the desires of the historic district to try and continue to keep the look and feel of the neighborhood overall. So I do think those are special conditions of the property, that the request is a reasonable one. It is the accessory dwelling units, a garage, all those things are allowed to be an accessory structure in this particular zone. Again, it's being driven by the fact that it's a through lot. So with that, I recommend approval.
Okay, and does the second have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just add, okay, so we're only dealing with the one.
Variance two.
Yeah, okay, so, so it still applies to me, the crux of this whole application is the through lot. Additionally though, it's also a bigger than average lot and it's vacant. And those three factors really do make this property quite unique in this area specifically as well. And it's pretty clear that the definition of the driveway ordinances, or the ordinance portions regarding the driveway, don't consider through lots. If you're on one street or the other, you can't see the other driveway, and they're essentially separate, even though they happen to be on the same parcel.
Just a point of order, Mr. Mattson, we're talking about.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's the second one. But the through lot stuff in terms of its size and being bigger than average and vacant also apply to the unique conditions here for the accessory dwelling unit being placed, because either side of the, pretty much, yeah, either side of the, if you put the ADU in front of the house, it violates the ordinance. If you put it behind the house, it violates the ordinance. So it's a hardship to have this through lot to get the conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit. And then the other factor is for anyone who pulls a building permit to build a house, you cannot make the drainage and stormwater runoff worse. You cannot get a building permit and pass inspection if you make the runoff worse. And then in addition to that, for anybody on this specific property, there's additional eyes looking on this in terms of the DPW and the DES. And we've already heard of these technical ways to meet the to improve the drainage. You can have permeable driveway, which I'd be happy to make as a requirement, but it's already being included as part of this application. And then the subsurface retention areas can hold water. I mean, I understand the concern that it hasn't already been fully approved, but if that was all done first and then we denied this, it's not sensible for the property owner with their rights to do that. And if we denied it now, they wouldn't even have a chance to try to do anything in the future, so it just wouldn't be possible. So for those reasons, I support this variance.
Bit of a long second.
Yeah.
So anyway, the motion on the table is to approve the variance from section 10.571 to allow an accessory structure to be located closer to the street than the principal structure. Mr. Mattson,
Yes.
Mr. Rossi,
No.
Mr. Ram,
Yes.
Mr. Nees,
Yes.
Mr. Mannel,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. That variance is approved 5-1. Okay. Now I will ask for a motion on, which is actually the first variance, which is 1, a variance from section 10.1114.31 to allow a second driveway where only one is permitted. Who would like to make a motion on that?
I suppose I'll make a motion to approve the first variance request, although I would add, I believe Mr. Neese had a stipulation. It was that if it changed based on site plan review, Mr. Neese?
I'm just seeing.
I can repeat what I said if you want, Madam Chair.
I just
Yeah,
wanna
so that could be the stipulation.
Okay, I just want to see if we have anything from the planning department on that. It's hard to see with our new interface, but our iPads just got updated, so. Okay, it's not from the planning department, but, so would you like to make the second to that, Mr. Nees, or?
Either way, I would accept your words for your stipulation to include in my motion.
I don't really want to make the second, but I'll give you the stipulation if you
Okay,
want.
I would, why not?
I'll make a second, and I'll add a stipulation that the variance approval is based on approval by the Department of Public Works for a stormwater management plan that allows the second driveway to be constructed.
Okay. All right, so we have a first from Mr. Mattson, a second from Mr. Rayam, with the stipulation that the approval for the driveway is conditioned on the DPW approving the stormwater management plan.
That would allow us construction of a second driveway
Okay.
on Partridge Street.
I can't write that fast. Okay.
Okay.
Discussion on the motion, please.
Yeah, okay, so, I guess, so again, a lot of repetition, but I'll start off, I do appreciate the concerns, because very clearly there is flooding issues on this property as it stands as a vacant lot that hasn't been engineered at all. But to go through the variance criteria, I'll take the first two together. The variance is not contrary to the public interest, and the spirit of the ordinance is observed. So the proposed use does not conflict with the explicit or implicit purpose of the ordinance. The accessory dwelling units are allowed by a conditional use permit, and the portion of the ordinance regarding the driveways pretty clearly does not consider through lots because the concept of having two driveways on the same frontage is quite a different scenario than having driveways on two opposite frontages that you can't see one from if you're on the other side. This single-family home with an accessory dwelling unit doesn't alter the essential character of the neighborhood or threaten public health or safety or welfare or otherwise injure public rights. And again, this to have a building permit and to pass inspections, that alone requires you to deal with the stormwater management. But in addition to that, there is plenty of extra engineering happening and oversight by other permits at the state level and with Public Works. And I believe the stormwater management plan goes before a board. But at any rate, there's multiple points of review here that would not be even allowed to be met if this variance, if this application cannot proceed. Substantial justice is done. The benefit to the applicant should not be outweighed by harm to the general public or to other individuals. This property is vacant, and the applicant has made a good faith effort to try to build a single-family home with an accessory dwelling unit. It's been through quite a process so far, and I think the general public's concerns are regarding the stormwater runoff and the drainage, and I've discussed how I think that will most certainly be improved, but I do understand the concerns. And then next, the values of surrounding properties are not diminished. Again, this design has been through many revisions and boards, and it's been approved by the Historic District Commission. I think it's tastefully done, and this new construction there's no reason to believe that this would diminish the value of the surrounding properties of the other single-family homes around it. And then finally, the little enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship because of the special conditions of the property, which, again, this is a through lot. It's a bigger than average lot, and it's vacant, which is pretty rare in the south end here. Again, the way the ordinance is written for driveways doesn't seem to properly account for through lots and corner lots for that matter, but this is specifically a through lot. So there's no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the ordinance and the specific application to this property. And then finally, the proposed use is a reasonable one, which it is.
Anything for your second, Mr. Ram?
Yeah, I'll try to agree with everything that Mr. Mattson said. The stipulation being put on here, I mean, I'm not an expert in the stormwater management. It really sort of puts us into the review of the experts who, developed the plan and then approved the plan. Even if it came back before this board and they showed me a great plan. To be honest, I'm not sure that I would be fully qualified to know whether it would work or not. I think this is, from the purposes of this board, looking at the things that we would look at from a map standpoint and what the property looks like and how it compares to the other properties in its zone, and allow something that is the applicant's choice, with the caveat that, hey, we're going to have some experts brought in, because I think it is a legitimate concern of the neighbors that there's this water issue with the property that's been there for decades. Can it be properly mitigated? And if it can't, and still have this driveway there, then the driveway won't be allowed. So,
Okay. So any discussion on the motion?
I would just add that it's permeable driveway.
again, I'm not an expert.
Okay, so just to make sure for the record, the motion is to approve variance from section 10.1114.31 to allow a second driveway where only one is permitted, with a stipulation that the applicant must submit a stormwater management program, stormwater management system, or stormwater management plan to the Department of Public Works that would allow the construction of the second driveway on the lot.
And have that approved.
And have that approved. Mr. Mano?
Yeah, I cannot support the motion for the simple reason, well, two simple reasons. I believe they fail on 2 of the 5 criteria. The first one, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. We've heard members of the public that are against the second driveway who brought up the stormwater issue, but they're against the second driveway. The second criteria is that the applicant hasn't demonstrated hardship for the second driveway. He's clearly demonstrated preference, but that's not what the ordinance says. It's hardship. Whereas members of the public would, from what I gather, would prefer a double driveway on Prairie Street and no driveway on Partridge. So I don't think the 5 criteria have been met, so I cannot support the motion.
Thank you. So I will call the question then. I will start with Mr. Nees.
Yes.
Mr. Rayum.
Yes.
Mr. Rossi.
Sorry, no.
Mr. Mattson.
Yes, also Mr. Mantle.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I forgot you. Mr. Mantle.
No.
Okay, and Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Yes. And the chair votes yes. So the approval is by 4-2, 4 being a majority of the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I will relinquish my gavel and welcome back our real chair for the next application.
Happily.
So the next item of business is item F, the request of the Reichel Family Revocable Trust owner for property located at 15 Marjorie Street, whereas relief is needed to construct additions to multiple sides of an existing dwelling, which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.521 to allow a 2-foot front yard where 30 feet are required. B, 12.5-foot rear yard where 30 feet are required. C, 28.5% building coverage where 20% is allowed. And 2, a variance from section 10.321 to allow a nonconforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 232, Lot 41, and lies within the Single Residence B District. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Timothy Huron with Huron Brothers Construction. I am the Reichels contractor. So just a general overview, the owners, Matt and Beth Reichel, have owned the property located at 15 Marjorie Street since July of 2013. It is a single-family dwelling unit on 0.19 acres in a SRB residential district. The existing structure is placed far back in the northwest corner of the property with an inland wetland buffer zone originating from the southeast direction. The property is non-conforming regarding front, right, rear setbacks, as well as lot area and lot area per dwelling. As you had just heard, we are proposing a two-story addition measuring 20 by 32 to the east side of the structure, as well as an 18 by 18 sunroom and 18 by 18 covered porch on the south side of the structure. To accomplish this, we would need to demolish the existing covered porch on the east side of the structure, as well as remove the existing 18 by 20 deck. Homeowners seek relief from section 10.310 and 10.321 to allow the enlargement of an existing lawful non-conforming structure that does not comply with lot area, lot coverage, front, right, and rear setback. Proposed setbacks would be front 2.5 feet, 45.5 feet on the left, 12.9 feet on the rear, and 16.5 feet on the right side. We would have, in this situation, a lot coverage of 28.3%. That being said, I would like to inform the board that the Reichels do own the abutting lot 232-39. That is approximately 0.41 acres. They are in the process of a voluntary merge on that, which would bring their total lot size to 0.62 acres, which is roughly 3 times larger than the average lot on Marjorie Street. Granting the requested variance will be conducive to the spirit and intent of the ordinance. We will not be contrary to public interest. There will be no negative effect to the neighborhood, nor public health, safety, or welfare. Although the front setback will be minimal at 2.5 feet, it should be noted that the front setback abuts a paper road, and the closest abutting property line is approximately 50 feet away. Regarding lot size and coverage, as I just mentioned, they are in the process of starting a voluntary merge that would, which would nullify the need for a relief on lot size. Substantial justice would be done by granting the variance. The homeowners completed a small addition on the property in the months before COVID-19. Since then, we have witnessed many changes to the world that we once thought were impossible. Work from home has become common, and with the addition of a growing family and aging parents, Matt and Beth seek to create a home in which they would be able to raise children as well as age in place themselves. If the hardship upon the owner's applicant outweighs any benefit to the public in denying the variance, then the substantial justice would be done by granting the variance. It is substantially just to allow a property owner the reasonable use of their property. The values of surrounding properties will not be negatively impacted by granting the variances. If granted, the variance would be an improvement to the client's home and property value, and thus inevitable increases to the value of surrounding properties. Special conditions of the property affect the usage of the property and constitute an unnecessary hardship. Due to some scheduling mix-up, we do have conditional approval from the Conservation Commission for this project as presented, but it is a unique lot because, as mentioned, we do have a inland wetland that is originating down here, and in doing so, it creates a inland wetland buffer zone that is covering roughly 95% of the property, and so there is no feasible, that in combination with the setbacks, we are looking at having the addition massed into this area of the property. The purpose and intent of the ordinance is to not negatively affected by the granting of the variance. As previously mentioned, although we seek relief from the ordinance, the setbacks and lot coverage, The homeowners are in the process of merging their two lots, which would remediate the noncompliance of lot coverage and lot size. Additionally, the paper road at the front of the building provides adequate buffer that fulfills the purpose and intent of setbacks in creating adequate light, air, and access between structures and abutting neighbors. In conclusion, for the reasons stated above, the homeowners respectfully ask the board to grant the variance as requested.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, Mr. Ram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So looking at page 69 of our packet, which is actually the drawing that's up there, there's a lot on here. And I tried to take a look at it relative to some of the other drawings that you have. I just want to make sure, could you kind of step us through what's new footprint that you're adding on here or changing in some way?
Certainly. If I can do it with my laser pointer
perfect.
here.
Tim, do you mind actually using the clicker that's up
Oh, I'm
there,
sorry.
just so that people at home can see?
Top button, okay. So the existing structure is roughly we have a roughly 18 by 10 covered porch that we mentioned we would be removing off the front of the structure right here. And otherwise, the existing structure is this right here. So we would be requesting to add the covered porch right here, sunroom right here, and this would be the two-story addition off the front of the house.
Okay. So the sunroom and the porch are both one-story additions in essence?
Correct.
Okay. And then the patio that you have below there that you show the two very comfortable looking chairs on, is that raised above 18 inches or is that at ground level?
So that is a pretty heavily sloped property. So that would be that is proposed to be roughly about 6 inches above the current grade, but the property does slope down towards that inland wetland buffer.
Okay.
And that was a large back and forth with Conservation Commission. Originally, we had requested that we put in a retaining wall much closer to this inland wetland. And in some work sessions and talking with them, we came up with this design in which we do not install retaining wall here, bringing up grade, and instead we slid that retaining wall back to here so that we can maintain this natural grade here and provide a little bit more outdoor living space for the client.
Okay, thank you. And just to 100% validate the lot that you said the applicants are owning and are trying to merge, I think it's on page 82 of our packet, kind of shows it. That's the one that's directly to the, I think it's south of the property, and it's long. It goes.
Correct, yes.
It goes a long ways down.
It does, towards the southeast, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against?
Before it took me a while to get to page 82 in our packet before we close the public hearing. I just want to confirm where the other lot is. It's in the front or it's on the side? Is that Sylvester Street?
I'm sorry, you were wondering the additional vacant lot that the Reichels
yes.
own? So let's see if we can, so right here, as you can see, existing structure is right here. This is their property line, right? Or no, I'm sorry, this is the setbacks that are granted. So the additional property lot is right here, and it does run significantly. It's 0.42 acres that runs down parallel to the Sylvester Paper Street right here.
Okay, and the wetland delineation, because it's a little blurry on my packet, the wetland delineation begins about how many feet down from the property line?
So currently, the wetland delineation is this dotted line right here.
Yes.
Yep. Right there, and we have approximately 44 feet of setback from that furthest most wetland point to our closest proposed structure.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anyone to, for, or against? Okay, then the public hearing is closed. And Mr. Neese?
Madam Chair, I have a question for staff, if I might ask. Could you explain how the city considers a paper street? I mean, is it,
Yeah,
I don't really understand what that means.
Sure, a paper street is considered a public right-of-way where a road has not been built yet. So the city reserves the right to build that street at any time or require an applicant to build a street, depending on what the development proposed is. But that is considered a public right-of-way.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Van?
Madam Chair, I'm willing to make a motion to approve the applicant's request as presented and advertised.
Okay. Is there a second? We
I'll
don't have a second. Okay.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and, just to further clarify, on page 59 of our packet, which is the staff plan, it really kind of shows the paper street that never got developed. This property is actually really on Sylvester Street, although it has a Marjorie Street address. If you go to Map Geo, the next property down that the applicant was referring to is the very long rectangle that sort of ends at the G1 district. So really, the applicant owns not only the blue outlined square, but then another very large rectangle that, again, is along the paper street. I suppose if the applicant really wanted to, at some point, could make a claim to get half of that paper street, which some other property owners have done in the past. And then on the backside, that large building that you see there is the Chase Home, which is one of the largest properties in the city. So towards that end, I mean, I do think the applicant is asking for a fair amount of relief, but again, they have some very unique conditions associated with their property. First is, it's a relatively small lot, but it really is surrounded by lots of woods that, because of wetlands, the paper street never got built. The property can never probably really be developed in any manner in the foreseeable future. I understand it might be nice to have the process completed as the as merging this into one lot, but the applicant does own both lots currently. So I think the coverage concern overall is 28.5% building coverage. 17 currently exists. It's clearly a pretty significant expansion. It's not quite double, but it's quite a bit. That said, really, once those two properties would be merged, it would be like 8.5% total coverage. And even without the merger, again, it's really not a developable property to be sold off. I think, in essence, the applicant is meeting the coverage requirement. And then the setbacks here, most of what the applicant is proposing for the most significant development goes, again, towards a paper street. So there's another, width boundary there before you get to the next property. The applicant could potentially put in a argument to say, hey, I can get, by right, get myself half that paper street. But there's a considerable distance between the applicant's property and the next, habited properties there, and where their structures are located, really up against Marjorie Street, not against the paper street of Sylvester Street. So I think that works in the applicant's favor. And then the more modest additions are really towards the south side of the property, again, towards their undeveloped property that they own, and also up against, one of the single largest properties in Portsmouth, that there's really, woods on the backside of them there. So I think the things that we're normally concerned about with setbacks, things like light and air, imposition on the neighboring properties, just because of where this property is located, I think are not significant. So with that, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. Is this in some way contrary to what we're trying to accomplish with the ordinance? Would it somehow change the neighborhood? I would say no, just because this particular parcel is so uniquely situated, way out and back. It's really not visible. You have to go up a very long driveway to access it, going from really the next street over to get up there. So this would not provide a visual impact of any sort. Would not seem to be overcrowding. So I think that's really being met. Granted, the variance would do substantial justice. Again, is there anything in the general public desires that would say that there's something more important there than would be for the applicant to make full use of their property. In this case, I say no. Again, it's a paper street. There's no one driving down it. The other neighboring properties really sort of face towards Marjorie Street. This is sort of their distant backyards. It goes across a dormant paper street that has not been built upon. So I think all those things say that the applicant here wins that argument. Granted, variance do not diminish the values of surrounding properties. Again, situated quite a ways away from the actual homes of the other properties, even really from their actual property lines. So with that, I think that there's no impact on surrounding property values. And then, as I just indicated, I think there are multiple unique situations about this property that say it should not be treated the way other SRB properties are being treated. That the applicant therefore is justified in, a fairly substantial addition, especially towards the paper street side. More modest additions on the other portion, but even with that, I think there's enough that says, hey, there's some unique conditions here, and that the request is a reasonable one. It is all to just continue to make use of the allowed residential structure that's there, but provide more room in a more modern setting, and provide some additional creature comforts that the applicant is looking to have. So with that, I recommend approval.
Does the second have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just say that this is the classic reason of what a variance is needed for. When I first started looking at what was advertised and the relief it needed, I was actually surprised at how much was being asked for. But then as soon as I dove into this application and saw how unique it was in terms of the really long driveway, so that this parcel is essentially located in the woods, and it is near a enormous parcel with the Chase home, and so basically, and also with the wetland buffer and all that, it just pretty much anything being done to this property, and typically like these pretty normal additions require relief, so I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Any further comments before we vote? Okay. A yes vote allows the additions. Mr. Neese?
No.
Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Ram?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You are approved.
Too big.
Okay. Item H, the request of Alma and Alexandra Lovecchio for property located at 87 Grant Avenue, whereas relief is needed to demolish the existing home and construct a new dwelling in the same footprint, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to allow an 8-foot right side yard where 10 feet are required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 251, Lot 7, and lies within the Single Residence B district. Is there anyone to speak to this? Is there anyone to speak to this? No, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
There's nothing to oppose yet. And we never heard from these people? And there's no one online.
I'd like to make a motion that we postpone consideration of this application until October meeting, sorry.
Oh, wait, is this?
Hi.
Alexander or Alma, but I am Alexander's mom, and I can potentially answer any questions that you may have regarding it, because I've been assisting them with this.
Unless you're an authorized representative, we have a form for it. You weren't considered a representative at this time. Sorry.
That's not him. Oh, that's Mark.
Is there a second to Mr. Rossi's motion?
Second.
To
Postpone to our October meeting. I can't remember the date of it.
Can we change that and postpone it to November? Since we already have
Three other-
4 postponements
Yes.
into October?
That's a good point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion is to postpone till November, and you do second.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
Yeah, I'm going to support the motion because we probably need to, but it is frustrating that I think there are a lot of people here who want to speak to this application, and they've waited for a considerable period of time to listen to us ramble on about many, many other things, and aren't going to have the opportunity to provide their input. So I will agree with it, but I am frustrated by it. And, you know, I have great empathy for those who came here tonight to speak, so.
David, may I ask a question? It's a procedural question. What in our procedure, are we even permitted to just turn the application down because there was nobody here, or is that?
We are permitted to do
that.
so. I don't remember a time when we have done so on a first.
Yeah, and my thought is, in overall fairness, maybe the applicant somehow did not understand what was expected of them, although I think our planning staff is outstanding in making sure that applicants understand that they need to be represented here. So, again, I support the motion. It's just with a heavy heart, and I did want to make sure that others who came to speak here tonight understand that I have great empathy for that, and wish that we could get through this tonight.
I concur with your empathy.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, I mean, I brought up doing it to November because of the postponements right now, but I too am frustrated by applicants who don't show up. Can we make it postponement to 2025 to be determined?
I mean, there's only another month after November.
No, it's 2 months after November. November, December, January.
That's not 2025.
2026, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I mean.
You can make whatever motion you want. Right now, the one on the table is for November.
Yeah,
I think it should just be simple.
I'm not willing to modify my motion to an indefinite.
Would you like to withdraw your second?
Are we still on November?
Yes.
I'll keep my second.
Okay.
I'm just going to,
The motion is to postpone to November. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, okay. Since there has not been a presentation, there cannot be a public hearing on this. So, I'm going to allow it, ask a question.
yeah.
But come up,
Come up
please,
to the
so
mic.
we can, yeah. And we do regret this and had no,
I appreciate the comments you made about feeling frustrated. I really do. We received notice of this only 1 week ago. We rearranged our entire schedules to come here and make our opposition, so that's what's most frustrating. Are you able to give an exact date of when this will be on the agenda again?
our November meeting is on, hold on. It's the third Tuesday in November.
There's also a public notice goes out again.
Right, the public notice
Right.
comes out a little
But,
before.
yeah, 1 week.
Yes.
This
I'll-
wouldn't be renoticed unless you guys make a motion to renotice it. The public meeting for November is the 18th.
November 18th. It's a Tuesday, same time, same
It's always the
place.
third Tuesday. It's always the third Tuesday.
Third Tuesday. So just to clarify, you said you will not resend notices to abutters, or you will?
Request, we can, I think.
I
we
would make a
should.
motion that this be re-advertised and notice sent out at the applicant's expense.
I'll
A
second.
second? Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Yes,
I appreciate
because
that.
We certainly don't want this to happen again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you're going to talk to us, you need to come up here.
But we are not.
But we're
in a
not
public
really,
hearing.
we're not in a public hearing, but if you have a question as the.
questions.
Okay.
I guess the question is, and thank you, David, for considering our 2 hours of waiting. I appreciate that courtesy. I'm in favor of this, now that it's part of the record.
Not the
Wait,
place.
Yes, but I do have a question.
Okay.
My question is, can you legally, or by, I guess I'm asking Stephanie, is there any way that you can accept our input
We can't.
at all?
No, because there's
Okay.
nothing
That's my
to
question.
comment on. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, send any written requests to the planning department.
okay.
written comments.
No, there's no hearing now. I'm sorry. We're going to take the meeting back. And if you have questions, you can call the planning department. You can talk to us after. So we're moving to I. And I hope the request of CABN Properties LLC, owner for property located at 409 Lafayette Road, whereas relief is needed to subdivide the existing lot into 2 lots, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to allow 0 feet of frontage for the rear lot where 100 feet is required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 230, Lot 22, and lies within the single residence B district.
I'm sorry, I'm not the chair, but there's talking in the back of the room and it's very distracting. So if any conversations could please go outside the chambers. Okay, they'll listen to you as the chair.
Excuse me, could we move the conversation into the hall? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, it's all yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, Derek Durbin. I'm here on behalf of the owner of the property, Cabin Properties LLC. So as I put in my narrative, the current deed to the property at 409 Lafayette Road, it describes 2 separate parcels of land with a total land area of 30,473 square feet. Parcel 1 that's described in that deed is approximately 13,500 square feet and has 100 feet of frontage on Lafayette Road. That would be what I'd call the front part of the property. Parcel 2, being the rear part of the property, is approximately 16,973 square feet and does not benefit from any public street access, as you'll see on the plan submitted with the application. Both of the parcels that make up 409 Lafayette Road, along with the adjacent properties at 413 and 417 Lafayette Road, benefit from a 50-foot wide access right-of-way. And as you'll see from the plans, there is a paved drive within that right-of-way that's about 20 to 25 feet in width, from which each of the properties is accessed. 409 Lafayette Road, 413, and 417. Kind of forms almost like a pocket neighborhood off of Lafayette Road, if you will. Not completely different than maybe what you see off of Islington Street with Islington Commons. Just the uses are different, obviously, out here. What the applicant is proposing is essentially a re-subdivision of the property to create 2 new house lots that more closely conform to the ordinance than what is described for the deeded parcels that currently exist. As it stands now, parcel 1 is non-conforming with respect to lot area in the rear yard setback. Parcel 2 is non-conforming with respect to frontage. I think I misstated in a footnote in my narrative, which you can ignore, that I kind of reversed it in my mind and said that, that 1 was deficient as to lot area per dwelling unit, but that's not. I had reversed the 2 parcels in my head. So what I just told you is accurate. As proposed, the front lot will conform to SRB zoning requirements. The rear lot would only be non-conforming with respect to the obvious lack of continuous street frontage. With that, just turn to the variance criteria. Granting the variances will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the ordinance or the public interest. Street frontage requirements are used primarily to regulate access and density, also to promote orderly development as part of that. The 50-foot wide right-of-way shown in the applicant's plans has existed for over 40 years, was specifically created to provide access off of Lafayette Road to the lots that I referenced, or the properties I referenced, 409, 413, and 417 Lafayette Road. The access right is specifically actually mentioned with respect to parcel 2 described in the deed, which is, if you will, the rear parcel that exists. So granting a frontage variance for the property will not alter the character of this particular area or this pocket neighborhood, and will allow the applicant to do basically what was contemplated when that right-of-way was created many years ago. Granting the variance will allow the applicant to re-subdivide the property in a manner that is more conforming to the ordinance than what is described for the current parcels. So for these reasons, granting the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare. Substantial justice will be done in granting the variance. There would be no public interest served by denying it. The applicant did acquire 2 deeded lots when it purchased 409 Lafayette Road. Unfortunately, one of those parcels doesn't benefit from continuous street frontage. If the variance is denied, the 2 lots will remain their existing non-conforming configurations, but the applicant would obviously lose the ability to build a single-family home on the rear parcel, which is more, as I said, non-conforming than what is being proposed here. So for these reasons, the loss to the applicant outweighs any perceived gain to the public. Surrounding property values will not be diminished by granting the variances. As I pointed out, granting the variance will not alter the character of this particular area or neighborhood. The proposed rear lot is situated directly across from the Friends of Lafayette House and 2 different churches on either one to the rear and one to the northern side of the property, all of which are non-conforming uses, arguably more intense uses of property. The proposed use is a conforming use that will create minimal impact on abutting properties, will make use of an existing right-of-way. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. The property does have special conditions, all of which I think I've pointed out, that do distinguish it from surrounding properties. The fact that it consists of 2 deeded lots, one of which was created without the benefit of public access, but does benefit from a private right-of-way within which there is a paved drive that accesses multiple properties already. Putting aside the fact that the property is comprised of 2 deeded lots, it does, just looking at it as a whole, have over 30,000 square feet of land area, can be subdivided into 2 conforming lots, but for the frontage requirement under the ordinance. But the purpose of that frontage requirement is served with the right-of-way. Owing to these special conditions, there is no fair and substantial relationship between the general purposes of the ordinance provision, in this case, the frontage requirement, and its relationship to the property. And finally, the proposed use is reasonable. It's being proposed to be used for a single-family residential purpose, which is a use that is permitted by right in the SRB zoning district. So with that, happy to answer any questions the board has.
Mr. Mason.
Thank you, Attorney Durbin. I guess I'm struggling a little bit to understand exactly where this right-of-way is. Could you kind of highlight that on the drawing, please?
Yes. Let me pick up the mic in case I need to talk into it. Okay.
Do not touch the screen, please.
I will not touch the screen.
It always has to be said.
The 50-foot right-of-way is that dashed line to basically that hard line. I'm sorry, the blue line right here. So the black dashed line to the blue dashed line.
And how far into the lots does it go? That's what I'm struggling with a little bit.
It goes into the abutting lot at, I think it's, I don't want to mix up the numbers, I think it's 413 Lafayette Road, this lot. It appears to extend about 20 feet or so into that lot.
How far to the southeast does it go?
Southeast. To the southeast, it ends right here. So basically just slightly beyond where we've drawn the lot line for lot 22-2, so right here. And then the existing driveway, you can see it or drive. It's about a 20 to 25-foot wide drive. Looks like a private street, runs right through here.
So,
and a driveway to 409 Lafayette Road through here to the existing house.
So this is where I'm a little bit confused. So the red hatched area says it's a proposed access easement in favor of lot 22-1, which according to the drawing, 22-1 is the lot that abuts Lafayette Road.
Correct. That would be because they would, the two lots would share a driveway entrance. You would have a driveway that crosses, if approved, proposed lot 22-1 to access, I'm sorry, I mixed that up. You would have a driveway that crosses proposed lot 22-2 to access the lot 22-1, which has the house on it, the way the lot line is drawn.
Okay. So I think I understand that. I have one other follow-up question. When I looked at the subdivision plan from 1981, it shows that the lot line between the two lots was to be removed. I take it that never actually happened?
There was a notation to that effect. Oh, geez, that got really loud. Sorry about that. I think I got used to talking to the other one that is not that loud. Yeah, I saw that and tried to figure out the history behind this, researched it, asked around, can't figure out why things were done in the manner that they were.
Okay.
I do know for a fact that Priscilla Pettis, who was the longtime owner of what I've called Parcel 1, never joined into that subdivision plan where the lot line was to be eliminated between her lot and the rear lot. So for purposes of this application, I've described it for what it is, not knowing that history, which is two deeded parcels. The city assesses it as one, so I've considered it under both scenarios for purposes of presenting the materials to this board. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Ms. Margerson.
So I want to go back to the right-of-way, sorry.
Sure, yeah.
So that hatched area will be the driveway for both properties? Because that does not extend onto lot 22.2. So whoever lives in lot 22.2, their driveway is on lot 22.1.
No, the
just the,
purple line.
The purple,
It's
okay.
to make it so the lots would be more conforming than what's described in the deed. The lot line was drawn the way it is, and so it's not obviously a straight line separating the two. It has that jog in it, and because that jog exists, where the existing driveway would fall onto driveway entrance, I should say, would fall onto lot 22-2, the rear parcel. So lot 22-1 would need to use that driveway access to where the existing house is. Yeah. Yeah. Apparently, I'm lawyering that response, so I'll let Eric respond.
Can we give him a try first?
Eric Weinrub with Altus Engineering. Yes, the two lots look like, I'll use the term, it looks like a piece of Tetra. And we did that intentionally because the existing house is there, and if we made each lot a rectangle and 15,000 square feet, we would be creating our own hardship with the front lot, because the front lot, we would be putting it in the rear setback. So that's why we made that jog. And so we made it large enough so that the driveway can stay as it is, so that the house in front can utilize that driveway, and then the house in back will come off that driveway and go across their own land into their building. That clarify
And
things?
towards that end, and I think we'll end some of the confusion. So the intent would be there would be another driveway that extends from that portion portion that has the easement on it into the buildable area of lot 22-2 to allow, say, a garage or some kind of driveway that would be accessible to that back lot.
Correct.
And you guys have worked out that there's sufficient room and curvature and all that kind of stuff to be able to make that happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. That was very
Thank you.
easy.
So we can't go on the private right-of-way to look at this because it is a private right-of-way. So, but not that I stalk the applications, but anyway, so assuming that we approve this, how is that right-of-way going to be treated legally?
So the shared driveway portion,
Yes.
so I'm not the attorney, but I would say that we're going to have a homeowners association
He's
so
already got an
that
HOA.
there's shared use and shared expenses for that.
Okay, and that's for the 2 lots,
Correct.
not for the other people?
The
Okay,
others,
all right.
yeah.
Okay, so that's probably outside of our purview, but I wondered if a homeowner association would be required.
I can answer the question. So it's basically going to be the way that I envision drafting it is an easement will be conveyed at the time that let's call it the rear parcel 22-2 is conveyed. An easement will be conveyed basically. It will define those maintenance responsibilities over that shared portion of the drive. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank
So
you.
it's not an association per se, but those responsibilities will be outlined in an easement, yeah.
Mr. Ram?
So, because I'm not sure your question actually would answer it, because are you asking for the right of way and how that gets maintained? For that 4 properties, well, currently 3, proposed 4 properties would be taken advantage of? Or are you asking about the little tiny 28 by 40 piece of easement?
I was talking about the 28 by 40.
And I think that's what he answered.
Because I didn't know if there would be any consideration of making that a public street. Let's put it that way. So, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just confused.
I know, you
Dave.
confused me
I know.
again.
I know. Sorry.
As-
Forget. This is probably just
Are there further questions on another subject? Are there any further questions?
an irrelevant subject to our consideration.
Was that a hand, Jeff?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone to speak in favor of this petition?
Yes, good evening. I'm Dave Baxter. I am a founder and current board member of 413 Lafayette Road, which is owned by the Friends of Lafayette House. And we're in support of the application, but we're going to request a stipulation, which I'll get to in a second. Just to give you some background on the house, this lot was originally created back in 1983 for the building of 6,000 square feet. We have 12 residents with intellectual disabilities. So the neighborhood really was us back off the street and 2 single-family residences on Lafayette Road. So there is going to be a little bit of a change, and although it's a single-family resident district, a house there doesn't present any issues to us, especially since the applicant in private discussions has agreed upon installing a fence along the southern border of the proposed lot, which is 22-2. So that would be nice. But unfortunately, in 1983, there was no ADUs and there was no Airbnbs, VRBs, etc. So we do have something unique in that our residents are not like your normal single-family house. They have certain challenges, certain requirements, and a short-term rental next to our house will endanger the safety of our residents. I don't know. I combed through the zoning regs. I don't know what the zoning is and what ADUs are. Specifically in the application tonight, there's no mention of an ADU, but if there is an ADU on the property and it has a year-to-year resident, that would be fine because there's some stability there. But if every weekend we see a new group coming in, it's going to present challenges for our staff. So my stipulation would be, if there is an ADU, that there are no short-term rentals allowed. And then we could, fully support the application.
I think what you're concerned about more is an Airbnb.
Yeah, an Airbnb.
Yeah, an ADU doesn't an ADU doesn't mean that. It's not really used for a short-term rental. I don't know if it's forbidden, but it's not.
I should just clarify, Airbnbs are not allowed in the city of Portsmouth.
Yeah.
They're not allowed in this
The
zone.
downtown overlay.
I thought you guys interpreted bed and breakfasts one.
Give us a second.
You could potentially, if bed and breakfast one was allowed, you could potentially fit that under an Airbnb.
Okay, I take that back. You can advertise regular short-term rental properties such as Airbnbs, hotels, motels. Sorry, bed and breakfasts, hotels, motels on Airbnb without them being the same thing as a regular unit that somebody owns for the purpose of renting it out on Airbnb.
Do we have the right to put that no Airbnb on a specific property and not on a?
Can I make a comment, please?
Please.
I want to wait for our discussion, but.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
maybe we should wait for the discussion.
Okay. So.
You can put whatever stipulation you want on. It's the enforceability of
Right.
it that you should
Okay.
consider.
That is. Okay.
Well, any consideration of a stipulation would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak to or against? Okay, the public hearing is closed.
The comment that I would like to make is that I think that it's premature for us to consider stipulations that involve exactly how the lot would be developed and improved until we have a specific proposal in front of us that would constitute building out the lot. Right now, if we approve it and subdivide it, it's just a buildable lot. And I don't see us I don't believe it's appropriate for us to, there may be all kinds of stipulations that we might want to put on it, but.
Well, it may never come back to us. It most likely will not come back to us since it's a very.
It may not, but
it might
I
not.
think we're wandering out of our jurisdiction
disagree.
to engage in hypotheticals.
Mr. Ram.
Yeah, just to, help explain my understanding of kind of where the city's left it, and it's somewhat tenuous, is that, uses of bed and breakfast 1, which is 1 to 5 guests, I think, and bed and breakfast 2, potentially if that is allowed in a particular neighborhood, somebody can say, I am a bed and breakfast and I advertise on one of these short-term rental sites because it's allowed. Now, currently in the SRB, which is our district here, that is not an allowed use. That said, there's all kinds of legislation that goes before the state every year, and the state contemplates allowing short-term rentals in all zones or residential zones. There's a certain industry that tries to promote that concept in front of the state legislature. Should the state legislature make a decision like that, the city's hands would be tied.
But at this moment.
At this moment, it is not a legally or ordinanceally allowed use in that particular zone.
We can't see the future.
Yeah.
What would you like to do with this application?
But I would add that if an ADU application went forward at some point in the future, or as currently allowed, they would still be going before a board, such as the planning board.
Though that may be changing.
No,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
necessarily.
Right.
I think-
Again, state law, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, what would we like to do at this moment in time?
I, again, reiterate that I believe we can only react to what we have in front of us, which is simply a plan to divide them into 2 lots. And I do think that this is a lot that lends itself to division into 2 lots, based on the size and the right-of-way access. So I am in favor of the application.
Is there a second?
Public hearing closed?
Yes.
Is that a motion?
Okay.
I'll second. Didn't like the
That was a motion? Okay, all right,
I'm
fine.
so
I
sorry.
move to approve
We're closed.
the application as presented and advertised.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
All right, now I actually
Thank
have
you,
to
Mitch.
work. Can I have one of those?
Yes.
please?
There you go.
Okay, the variance is not contrary to the public interest. The spirit of the ordinance is observed. The purpose of the lot frontage requirement is really all about access to the lot and not overcrowding a road with lots that are too closely spaced together and the attendant driveways and ingress and egress. Since both of these lots are accessed by an established right-of-way, that really doesn't come into play here. It's not really landlocked. There is adequate access to the lot with that right-of-way, so the variance therefore is not contrary to the public interest or the spirit of the ordinance. Substantial justice is done. This is a large lot. It's oversized for the zone, and it would be a substantial loss to the owner not to be able to enjoy the benefit of dividing it and the consequent increase in value for the property, and that is not outweighed by a loss to the general public. The comments about the specific abutter notwithstanding is that's really not a general public issue. The values of surrounding properties are not diminished. The other uses adjacent to it would seem to me to be insensitive to the property as 2 lots versus 1 lot. And literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. I think the hardship of the property that requires this variance is, let's see, the hardship of the property is that it is separated from Lafayette Road by a large similar property, assuming, that the state after they're subdivided, and there really is no way to get back there unless, let's see, I'm not sure I'm saying this right. Hold on for a second. Who seconded this?
I did.
I'm going to rely.
Don't depend on me to save you.
Oh, Beth,
You're the first, I'm the second.
All right. Okay, I would.
Narrow and deep.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to the points I made on the first and second. It's a very deep lot, and it's really impossible for it to have frontage just because of the nature of the property itself. So I'll just leave it at that as being the hardship.
Does the second have anything to add?
Yes, I will.
Specifically with this?
I will flesh out a little bit of my second. In terms of the spirit and intent of the ordinance, I mean, we have frontage requirements so that the streetscape is orderly and uniform, and it makes for more pleasantly aesthetic neighborhoods. In this case, this is a tandem lot. The lot is behind another lot, therefore there really is no, the spirit and intent is not really applicable to this lot. And the public really does not lose anything through this, even though it's a zero frontage, because it is a lot that is behind another lot. In terms of the hardship criteria, the property has special conditions that distinguish it from other properties in the area. And owing to these special conditions, a fair and substantial relationship does not exist between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to this property, and the proposed use is a reasonable one. This property does have special conditions. It is not on a street frontage. Therefore, it does not make much sense for the purposes of this public ordinance to have 100 feet street frontage be applied to this property. The proposed use is reasonable. This is a single residence home in a district in which it is zoned for it, which is the single residence B.
Thank you.
You saved him.
I saved you.
Is there any further discussion before we vote? Okay, so a yes vote allows the subdivision. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Ms. Murchison? Yes. Mr. Reyes?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay,
Madam Chairman,
yes.
motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank God.